LeBron is going to stay with the Lakers. He agreed to a 2-year, $97.1 million deal. It includes a third-year player option, and that makes LeBron the highest-earning NBA player in NBA history with $523 million in guaranteed money. Now, he doesn't have a no-trade clause in his contract, but if he does get traded, he has a 15% trade kicker for that. He is 38 years old, and with this extension, now the Lakers could have north of $20 million in cap space in the 2023 offseason, and they will have a max cap space slot in 2024.
Oh, 2024? Mm-hmm. Is he off the... No, that's his player option.
Russell Westbrook will be off the Bucks. Yes. I think this is awesome for LeBron. Shout out to him. He's in Los Angeles for a reason. And look, Drew, you maybe listen to this. The fact of the matter is he's not winning another championship with the Lakers. I hate to be the bearer of bad news and all, but when you look at the Lakers' last 2 seasons, you can have reason for, in theory, but they haven't shown you anything to give them the benefit of the doubt. Anthony Davis is crippled, per usual. Maybe this year he can stay healthy. And then you have Russell Westbrook. He's not going to fit there no matter what role he's throwing because you have to be an additive player next to LeBron. And Russell Westbrook just isn't, and that's not going to change. I think Darvin Ham is a very good hire. But Lonnie Walker is not going to fix his team. He's a much worse fit than Malik Monk because Lonnie is an isolation scorer. That doesn't work with LeBron James. You're not looking for that. You're looking for a guy who can knock down shots at a high level. He's not going to bring that. And I think that core defensive utility that they had in a guy like Alex Caruso, a lot of that has not been restored with this team. And so I think for LeBron, in terms of staying in Los Angeles, is a great move. And I think his legacy is already solidified. But when we look at LeBron's last few years in the NBA, we're not going to see him go out with a title with the Lakers. That's just not going to happen here because, like I just said before, they've given you nothing to show. This team actually can contend in Western Conference that is only continuing to get more deep.
I've said this a lot on this show, and I'll say it again. The Lakers and LeBron got lucky with the bubble year. I'm talking about in terms from a legacy standpoint because they won a championship, but had it not been for that year, which is a huge, just a weird season, I'm not taking it away from them. I know it counts. We're talking about one of the biggest failures in NBA history in terms of LeBron going to LA and not winning. Every season outside of the bubble has been a complete and utter failure. His first season, he gets hurt. They drop out the playoffs. They miss it. Then the year after the bubble, they lose in the first round with AD and LeBron both on the court, both healthy. They were coming back for injury, but they were playing. Anthony Davis, I know, got hurt in that series. Then this past season, the Russell Westbrook disaster, they missed the playoffs. LeBron has missed the playoffs 50% of the time in LA. They're probably missing the playoffs this upcoming season. It doesn't matter if they're going to have a max cap slot in 2024 because LeBron's going to be 40 years old, and LeBron's time is done. I know he's still a top player in the league, but his time of going to the playoffs and getting out the first round and making these runs, they're done. They're over with. It's not happening again. This extension made it clear. LeBron just wants to live in LA. He wants to retire there, and he doesn't care about winning a championship again. He doesn't. And also, Bronny's eligible to be drafted in 2024. So if he's a top prospect, then the Lakers and LeBron won't have a say in where he goes. But let's say he's not and he's an undrafted free agent, then, yeah, it gives him a clear pathway to go to the Lakers and play with LeBron.
I feel the same way. First of all, shout out LeBron, most guaranteed money of all time by a player, first or second best player in NBA history, however you want to slice it, as long as it's Jordan LeBron. I'm not going to argue with you. I feel the same way. I think this just solidifies that this is the last stage of LeBron's career. If this was 32-year-old LeBron, he wanted to win another championship, he's not signing this extension. I know you kind of scoffed when he said they're not going to make the playoffs, and I feel like a lot of people feel that way too, because when you have AD and LeBron, you're almost expecting that these two guys can elevate teams and just make it work. We'll figure it out. This roster sucks. Like, there's no way around it. This roster is bad. The Russell Westbrook experience last year wasn't good. This year with the new head coach, we're hoping offensively, the big plan is put him in the corner so he can shoot corner threes. Lock in defensively. Things that Russell Westbrook really has not done throughout his career. Now you're expecting him at a later age to do that as a number 3 option. I don't think he's really going to get behind it. And you also have the rumors of AD being the number 1 option offensively. It sounds great. Can AD play 50 games? Who knows? If he's not going to be on the court for half the games, how can he be your number one option? So this all falls back on LeBron. The only thing I'm really interested in here is I think he wants to stay in LA just because his family's there, his kids go to school there and everything. And he has like his whole thing with HBO. He produces shows and movies and stuff like that. But I'd be curious if, management has something in place for Kyrie, or at least the rumor is they're willing to give up 2 first-round picks now, which should be a no-brainer. Like at this point, go all out, try to get Kyrie, because I would much rather have him than Westbrook as my number 2 or 3 option, depending if AD is able to stay on the court. So I'm curious if, when they sign the extension, like, hey, Kyrie's a real possibility. We're willing to give the 2 first-round picks. We're just waiting on KD to get traded first or something like that. So that's the only thing I'm curious about, because if they do get Kyrie, makes things a little bit more interesting. But for now, this just solidifies LeBron's in the last stage of his career, and he's cool just riding to the sunset.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. Saying the Lakers' LeBron tenure has been a failure, I get it. The Lakers' expectation year in and year out is championships. But what do we play for?
Championships.
And they've won a championship.
It's been mostly a failure.
25% of the time they've hit. 75% of the time they've not lived up to expectation, in part to injuries, in part to not buying into the coach, in part of highly incapable roster moves and transactions and what have you. But, you can't look at that and say it's a failure. They've talked about this in the show, Drew. It's a disappointment, a major disappointment, because Anthony Davis should be a top 5 player in the game. But in reality, like you said with the bubble, the reason the Lakers got lucky was because they had a 4-month hiatus, so Anthony Davis's body was in the right shape. And his shots were going in then. Anthony Davis is not this renowned jump shooter that he was in the bubble. Let's just keep it a buck. And that's why people are saying, this dude's top 5. Well, PJ Tucker and all these guys are saying, you have to let him make these shots because that's a win for us, so long as he's not getting into the paint. But realistically, he's not going to make those shots again. You look at his work ethic when he's shown you the last 2 seasons, there's nothing to suggest we can give this guy the benefit of the doubt. But shout out to LeBron. I'm happy for him. It's just really sad he's going to ride into the sunlight with a crippled AD and not really much else to show outside a highly incapable front office, in my opinion. But I will say, with Darvin Ham, I scoffed because the Lakers missed the playoffs last year, not just because of Russell Westbrook, but they gave up on the season. Why? They weren't into Frank Vogel. Darvin Ham is a former player, a player's coach, and he just wants to learn something from each of his stops in Atlanta, Milwaukee. He was in the Lakers in 2010. And I think for them, this was a brilliant hire because you can rebuild with him. You can try to win now with him. He's a tough guy. It's not going to put up with any BS. In the end, are they a contender? No way. The team's not good enough. But it's hard to say that it won't make the playoffs with a little new juice, a little more energy to get this team into the defensive end of the ball where they can be a top 10 defense. I think realistically they can be, even with Anthony Davis playing only 55 games.
Are they a better team than the Kings, roster-wise? The fact that you have to think about it tells me you think the Kings are a better roster.
Thing is, if there was just one play-in game, I would take the Lakers.
It all comes down to the play-in.
If it's Lakers versus Kings in the play-in, I'll take the Lakers.
I'm taking the Lakers.
De'Aaron Fox is cooking Westbrook.
Dude, they have LeBron James.
And
For one
Sabonis
game,
is cooking AD.
For one game, that's it's tough. But for one game, if you said they're playing each other, I'm taking the Lakers.
I think it's very kind of you to promote the Kings in a positive light, and I think they had a cute off season, but you just hit the nail on the head.